We all hear about the Battle of Yorktown, right? It's that huge, decisive moment that's supposed to have won the American Revolution. But here's a question. What if the Americans couldn't have possibly done it on their own? We're going to dig into just how crucial France's role really was in this victory. Was their help just a nice little boost, or was it the one thing that made the whole win possible? Let's find out.
And you know, this whole idea came from a fantastic question someone posted online. It just cuts right to the chase, and it's the exact question we're going to tackle, using historical records and analysis to get to the bottom of it. Okay, so to really get why the French were such a game changer, we have to rewind to 1781. After 6 long, brutal years of fighting, the American Revolution was, honestly, running on fumes. Morale was in the gutter, the money was gone, and a big, war-winning victory felt like a pipe dream. The whole future of the United States was really just hanging by a thread. Now, General George Washington, he had a plan, but man, was it a massive gamble. He wanted to launch a full-on assault against the British headquarters in New York City. We're talking about the most heavily fortified spot in all of America. Washington was basically ready to bet the entire revolution on one single, incredibly desperate move.
And look, that's not just my opinion. A lot of historians and analysts agree. An attack on New York? It would have been an absolute disaster. The Continental Army would have been shattered. It was a plan that probably would have handed the war to the British right then and there.
So just as the American cause is about to completely fall apart, everything changes. The French arrived. And we're not talking about a few advisors or a shipment of guns. No, this was the full might of a global superpower, one that was just itching for a chance to get back at their old rival, Great Britain. They brought a professional army, a powerful navy, the whole shebang.
Let's just talk numbers for a second, because they're pretty staggering. First up, the soldiers. France sent over 9,000 professional, well-trained, and incredibly well-equipped soldiers. That number alone was a massive shot in the arm for the American cause.
But an army is only one part of the puzzle. France also brought something the Americans had practically zero of: a real navy. A fleet of 36 powerful warships set sail for the American coast. And this fleet, as you'll see, was maybe the most important piece of all.
And of course, they brought the big guns, and I mean that literally. The French supplied 90 pieces of heavy artillery. This wasn't just any old cannon. This was specialized siege equipment designed to smash fortifications to bits, exactly what the Americans were missing. I mean, when you lay it all out like this, the numbers just speak for themselves, don't they? The French brought more professional troops than the entire Continental Army, and they brought all of the naval power. This wasn't just helping out. At this point, the combined force was actually a French-majority army.
So, with all this new firepower on the table, Washington's risky New York plan was out. Instead, it was the French General Rochambeau who persuaded Washington to go with a much smarter strategy, cornering the British General Cornwallis and his whole army at the port of Yorktown, Virginia.
The whole plan was just beautiful in its simplicity. You've got the American and French armies marching down from the north to block off any escape by land, and at the exact same time, that huge French fleet sails into the Chesapeake Bay, blocking any escape by sea. It was a perfect trap.
And that naval blockade? That was the absolute key to the whole operation. It's what turned Yorktown from a fortress into a cage. With the French Navy controlling the water, Cornwallis was well and truly stuck. There was just no way out.
So the siege finally hits its peak with this incredibly daring nighttime assault on 2 key British defenses. They called them Redoubts 9 and 10. And this was a true team effort. French soldiers stormed one, while American troops, led by none other than Alexander Hamilton, stormed the other. Taking those 2 positions was the final nail in the coffin. It meant the Allies could roll their heavy cannons right up and blast the British line from point-blank range.
You know, it's one thing to talk about strategy, but what was it actually like to be there, in the trenches? Well, we have this incredible find, the personal journal of a French officer on Rochambeau's staff. He wrote down what happened every single day, giving us a front-row seat. Wow, just listen to the intensity in this entry from October 10th. They're firing red-hot cannonballs at the British ships stuck in the harbor, just setting them on fire one by one. Can you imagine seeing that? The pressure on the British must have been immense.
But that final push on the redoubts came at a brutal cost. You can feel it in his entry from that night. He's just grimly tallying the casualties. These weren't just numbers to him. These were his comrades, fighting and dying right next to American soldiers for the same goal. The final tally for the French in that attack, 46 killed, 68 wounded.
And then,
This is it. This is the moment. After weeks of constant bombardment, with his defenses smashed, Cornwallis finally sees that it's hopeless. The Journal for October 17th records it. A British officer walking out with a white flag. It was finally happening. The end was here.
So the white flag is out, the fighting stops, and the surrender negotiations begin. The perfect trap drawn up by the French and sprung by the combined Allied armies had worked better than anyone could have hoped. The result was the formal surrender of more than 8,000 British soldiers, along with all their weapons and supplies. For the British Empire, this was a humiliating, catastrophic defeat. It completely broke their will to keep fighting the war.
But look, if you need one final piece of evidence, let's just go straight to the man in charge. In his official dispatch the day after the surrender, General George Washington himself left absolutely no doubt. He said this brilliant success was due to the aid of France. The American commander-in-chief gave the credit loud and clear to his allies.
So let's circle all the way back to that original question. How important were the French? Well, when you look at the sheer number of soldiers, the brilliant strategy, the overwhelming naval power, and then you hear the words from Washington himself, the evidence is pretty overwhelming, isn't it? It kind of leaves you with one last thing to think about. In the long story of history, how often is something as big as independence ever really won alone?